Welcome to what is definitely episode 9. I know I screwed up multiple times about what episode number I was on last episode, which was 8, not 7. It's definitely episode 9 of the Splitfire gaming podcast. What has happened in the intermediate time? GW surprised us with some more marine releases. And that's it. Oh yeah, I got 200 subscribers on the Twitter, so I'm officially an influencer. Not subscribers, followers. Subscribers is OnlyFans.
You got more than me.
Anyway, introducing the guest. Let's cut out the intro. It's all right because my guest this week is Allan. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Allan is probably the biggest star I've had on this. I know I had Graham last week or last time, and he was major, but Allan is big league.
Wow.
What, we've got 200 and odd subscribers on YouTube.
I think encroaching 250.
250. How many Twitter followers have you got? Just to big myself up here.
I only started. Well, I'm going to defend myself. I do not work social media, and like I don't even if it wasn't for Warhammer and the Warhammer forums, I wouldn't even be on Facebook, right? And my girlfriend and my friends were like, "You need to get on Twitter. You need to get on Instagram." And I was like, I don't even know how to use them. And so I think on Twitter I've got about 4 currently. But
well, you know, I'll give you some tips if you want.
Yeah, you give me tips. In terms of YouTube, like, yeah, we're doing really well. And on Facebook, people probably actually don't know my name, but you know, Toy Soldier Tales is the channel and the Facebook page. And
because you might as well pimp it now because nobody listens to the end where I usually put the plugs. So.
Oh, well, you know, like Toy Soldier Tales is a channel that I set up on YouTube, Facebook. We're on Instagram and Twitter as well, but you know, I basically just copy the posts from Facebook and put them on there. And yeah, we record. When it's not COVID, we do a Warhammer Fantasy Battle reports. And we've just started our own podcast because we can't play Warhammer Fantasy. so
it's almost like you're copying my idea. But you know.
I'm not gonna lie, I did. I was
but you're using your bigger subscriber base to like, what's the word? Not undercut me, but outdo me, whatever that is.
Oh, but you've got 200 followers on Twitter. I've got 4.
Yeah, but this has turned into a disgusting love-in, isn't it? We'll stop comparing social media. How many OnlyFans subscribers have you got, though? That's the major one.
None that I would own up to.
See, that's why you've only got 4 Twitter followers. You need to open new horizons. Veteran viewers, listeners, will remember Graham last week said he appeared on your show. And to one-up that, I've actually remembered your name. And Graham didn't when he appeared in a section of your show when he was on when he was playing his Beastman.
It was so funny because I noticed it whilst we were recording, and then when I was like obviously editing the video, I was like, he just doesn't know my name.
I think it was very good of you not to just edit it out, but to bring massive attention to it.
I love taking a mic. It's fine.
Yeah, it was. Then I finally watched the. I was watching it all the way through, and the post-battle discussion, which I hadn't watched before. I was like, "This is going off the rails."
Yeah, Graham can talk. He's brilliant on a podcast. He can talk.
Let's just wind him up and let him go. How did you get into battle reports?
What it was a case of, why don't we just give this a go, and then I'll just see how hard it is, editing it. And I did it. It took forever to edit, and I was like, I can't do this. I really can't do this. And then it wasn't until like a year or so ago that I just couldn't find content for Warhammer Fantasy Battle reports. I used to watch Once Bitten, but his was just pictures, and he'd talk over the pictures, and I was like, oh, and then what it was, I think I started watching 40k in 40 minutes. And I was like, oh, these guys are the best. The graphics and everything they do, it's fantastic. I was like, I'm going to give it another go. So that's why we started it again.
I know exactly what you mean about mini wargaming, because if you took a shot every time they forget steadfast, you'd have cirrhosis of the liver. And you know it's coming. You've lost by 2, right? So that big unit that is going to break in a game-breakingly bad way because they've forgotten you don't modify the leadership every time.
I think Ash sometimes was the worst, right at the beginning, because he was obviously the most knowledgeable player out of all of them, and the others just believed him. and then he'd be like, oh yeah, it's this rule. And then don't get me wrong, that guy knows about 20 different rule systems, 30 different games. But he but it'd be one of the things that got me was he once did something like 4 wounds in combat, right, or something like that, and then he was obviously going to lose the combat, but then said he'd done 8 wounds. Something like that. That was
just a blatant cheat. That's a cheat.
It's it was something like the mountain had caused 8 wounds, and and then he was like, "Oh, you've caused 4 wounds." It's like, no, he did 8. It was something like that.
You're on camera.
It is difficult to keep track though. When you do the battle reports, the recording is a lot harder than you think, and trying to keep track of the game, but also trying to make it enjoyable, but also thinking ahead, how is this going to look on camera? It's quite difficult.
I can see it's definitely, I can see how it's difficult, but after the 10th, 20th time, I start to lose sympathy. Yeah, they're gonna forget steadfast. I don't want to dump all over mini wargaming because they do produce fantasy content, and they don't give a shit about a tiny little YouTube channel criticizing them anyway. And fair enough. What did you see the worst one, which I don't think they should have published because it's so wrong? Is where is Josh versus what's he called, Lucas Dark Elves, and he takes his ward and the regen saves for the Cauldron Death Star unit. He takes them both every time. This game is totally void.
I think I watched one once. That was a bad one, but I remember I watched one once, and I think the guy's lord died on turn 1 or something. There was something horrendous. Oh no, I just remember what it is. He was playing against vampire counts, and he was using ogres. And he knew that he was playing against vampire counts, right? They obviously talk before the battle. And so he took a Hellheart and he just ran his ogre book right up, used Hellheart, and just blew up all the other guys' wizards. And it was and on turn 1 or turn 2. And I was just okay. And then the game was over in 30 minutes.
That's not good for television. That's good for tournament play.
I know I'm going to get criticized because I took a flaming banner against Wood Elves, right? But the thing is I only get time to record one game, whereas it's their job, their full-time job to record games. Surely they could have put a better episode out that week.
At least you didn't put it in the vault and you've had to pay for it.
I've never paid for the vault.
I went through, I paid for it, then they stopped doing fantasy, so I stopped paying for it, and they brought it back a bit, so I bought it again, and then I stopped, and then I don't know. It's not consistent.
No, it's not.
But my usual question is, how did you get into the hobby?
Well, what it was I was like 7 or 8 or something, and my old man was in the army, and we were walking past the Games Workshop one day, and I was like fascinated by all the models in in the window, and I obviously played with like like plastic World War II soldiers, that you could get 150 of for 20 pence, that kind of thing. And my dad was like, all right, he likes this. And so one day he came back from the army, on leave, and he'd bought off one of his soldiers, like a fully painted, I think it was like a fourth or fifth edition undead army, right? When it was still had like mummies and vampires
the combined undead.
Yeah, like combined undead like army, and he was like, "Here you go," and like gave it to me, and I was just like, "Oh, this is amazing," but I'm, at the time I was 7 or 8. It was probably a really bad present because I ended up trashing it, and
did you carry the metal models around in a plastic carrier bag?
Oh, dude, it was awful what I did to him. I used to play with him in the garden, in like the grass and the plants and stuff, and I absolutely trashed him. But what happened was I got to about 10 or 11, and I was like, I've got this rule book. I might as well read it. So I read it.
We've exhausted all the possibilities of grass-based entertainment.
Yeah. Well, so I read it, and then I was like, all right, okay, this seems fun, because I used to like play chess and stuff as a kid, and I was like, all right, this seems fun. And I remember getting like the army together, and got like someone, like a couple of units, and like my character and stuff, and I went down to like Games Workshop to like join like beginners Sundays and and things like that. But they'd already moved on an edition by the time like I came round. So it was like all the rules that I'd learned were wrong.
It's an early introduction to Games Workshop sales practices there. All these models are useless, and we've split the armies.
Oh well, like I tried getting into fantasy, but I found it really difficult, and there wasn't many kids my age who played it. Early, this is like 6th edition, like 5th, 6th edition, something like that. And so I ended up joining the 40k bandwagon, and I didn't play fantasy again until 7th ed.
Oh, that's a bit of a gap.
Yeah, it's because, like, as I said, like no one my age played it. It was all the older men, who played it, and all the kids, on beginner Sundays played 40k. So I played 40k, and then I was became like an absolute 40k whore. Grew up with it. Went to tournaments. I played a lot of 40k tournaments in my time, and it got to the point where I was finding 40k really, really, really easy. And I had this like almost absolutely disgusting army list that had something like 100 odd wins and 2 losses, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go get back into fantasy, because that's a harder game to play at the time. So that's when I made the switch to fantasy.
Did you ever go back to 40k, or was it fantasy loyalist?
So what it was I became a fantasy. I sold my soul to fantasy. Loved it. I didn't go back to undead. I played. Well, it was just like Beastmen, Warriors of Chaos, that kind of thing. And because I used to play Chaos Space Marines as my and Chaos Demons as my 40k army. And I every now and again, some people who I'd know would be going to a tournament, like a 40k tournament, and be like, "Oh, can you come along?" It'd be like a teams event, and they're like, "Oh, can you join our team?" And so I kind of was like a bit of a 40k mercenary. And I played up until I think it was 6th edition, 7th edition, something like that. I think I maybe played 2 games of 7th edition and was like, yeah, I can't get into this.
The magic is gone.
Yeah, the magic had gone. The magic
psychic
had gone.
phase had gone anyway.
Well,
literally it had.
But yeah, so that was like 7th edition, and because I remember playing 6th, and I was like, right, okay, I'll learn 6th, and then 2 years later, 7th came out, and I was like, it's only been 2 years. Like I've only just learned this edition, and now you brought out a whole new one with like new books and everything. And then so I didn't really play 7th, and then I was like, oh, I might get into it again. And then they were like, oh wait, 8th's out, and I was like, okay, that's been 3 years. And then all of a sudden, 9th's out, and it's like been 3 years. I was like, whoa, calm down. You know?
Ratchet up. Gone are the days of 7 years between editions. Is it 4th and the 5th, or 3rd and the 4th is almost a decade long?
3rd into 4th was, I think, 6 years. It was like 1998 for 3rd edition and 2004 for 4th edition. But I started playing when it was 3rd edition, 40k. And so, I played like 4 or 5 editions of 40k. And, I was a slave to it. But no, fantasy is the game for me. It's my favorite game. I love everything about it. So, yeah.
Well, that's a good time to mention that the topic that we've decided to talk about is Warhammer Fantasy Battle.
Wow.
And as we were discussing before, we have made no notes. Because if we can't talk about this game that we both love without referring to notes, it's very sad.
It should, yeah, that's very true.
I don't know if I've explained this before. I probably have. I got into fantasy. It would have been 4th edition, and I think I was about 8 or 9. And we went from the old Epic. My friend just brought some Epic models that he'd been introduced to because he was 2 years older than me. So we went from Epic, we went to Titan Legions, and then just as like, I think we did a bit of 40k, a 2nd edition, and then just as like a fiat, because he was the oldest, said, right, we're doing fantasy now. Like, oh, what's fantasy? Like, well, it's like this. It's and it's just sort of like, oh, I don't know what is it. Right, you're doing Dark Elves. Like, right. So I'm doing Dark Elves then. So I've still got the 4th edition army book, and we had some of the metal models, and we didn't. I don't even think we played a proper game. We just sort of assumed what the rules were, and for whatever reason, I don't know whether it's the fluff, the lore, the way they rank up. It's all from then. It's just been the game I've liked the most, and we went. So that dropped off, and then we got back into it sort of in the early 2000s.
So 6th edition.
Yeah, so 6th edition where I was Lizardmen, and that was we had John and Adam have already been on before. We had the people I played the most, and we played quite regularly then, and that's just when you start to understand, like, oh, it's blocks of infantry, positioning is really important. How you set up has a massive impact on the game, and we played some massive battles like at the time because 6th edition it wasn't as like the unit size, it hadn't inflated like it did in 8th. But we were playing like 3,000 point battles, and they would team up because I had for some reason had the bigger army, so we did these massive series of. They would team up and fight against me. I was very excited because I applied some real world tactics, like the bleak order or refused flank, I think is another.
Oh yeah, refused flank. Yeah,
I used to go on about all the time, but it's connected to Frederick the Great anyway. You pile your strongest units on one side and you roll up on one flank. And I did that in a game like, wow, this actually works. This is like being a real general. And I don't think you get that feeling as much from the skirmish or the other games. I don't know whether it's that, or it's probably that combined with the fluff and the lore, which I know the 40k fluff is really good, but there's just something.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, if you like ranked up a 2,500 point Warhammer Fantasy Army, it looks like amazing. There's like blocks infantry, there's cavalry, maybe some monsters and stuff like that. It looks fantastic. But if you like rank up like I say rank up. If you place 2,500 points of 40k, it's like 4 models.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's not an army.
No, so where's the rest of it? Like it's,
yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
And then because everyone sort of moved away, or John moved away anyway. So that sort of petered out, and then I sort of started on it twice. The new because it was Iron the Blood that came out, and I thought, oh, I'll give Skaven a go. So I had a reasonably sized Skaven army. I played 1 or 2 games, and then for some reason I just thought I think Vince, who was on episode 2, he had just plugging my own show here. He had he got the high elves from the Iron the Blood, and I thought, I'll try. In the back of my mind, I'll try high elves, and I bought them, and it's just where have you been all my life? Like, this is the best.
I like how you started with Dark Elves, though.
Yeah, I've come full circle, and it's like I could play this game all with the high elves. I could play it 24 hours a day, and I think I've done like some days where I've done 3 or 4 games in a row, and I can keep doing it. It's just I just enjoy everything about it. And I know you were saying before you didn't like pre-measure and all that, but I just find 8th to be the best iteration of the rules.
I think so. As I said, I came into like fantasy again properly as an adult in 7th edition, and that really suited my tournament player, ideals, and bending the rules or like abusing something, and.
As an aside, I should point out that you are the person who introduced me to the White Lion Lariel Ban of the World Dragon unit of death.
Yeah, so, I wasn't even using that though, was I?
No, you just sort of because we met at a tournament. I think Graham was organised that.
It was Graham's tournament, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just sort of, why are you using a White Lion horde with a Lariel thing? Like, I didn't even think of that.
well, yeah, okay, I'll come back to that in a second. But yeah, like with 7th, it really suited my my tournamentness, and I'd go to like the grand tournaments at Warhammer World and like a splattering of like other tournaments, and I'd always be like, yeah. But I remember I was working for a Games Workshop at the time, and was I working for Games Workshop at the time? No, maybe might have just left before. But 8th edition came out, and I remember reading. I think one of the first army books that came out for 8th edition was the Orcs and Goblins army book, and I remember looking at it going, "This is really well written." I'm not going to say that about all the 8th edition army books, but I remember reading the Orc one going, "This is really well written. There's nothing too overpowered." It's really, I love the way it's put together, and then I really liked the condensed magic items section. And some people obviously won't, but I thought it was quite characterful of Orcs because they don't really make their own magic items and they steal magic items off other people.
Yeah, and I think as well for me, gameplay. So if you've got too much choice, there's things that you would never pick.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like this. I was like, if this is how all the books are going to be, then this is going to be good. So I definitely prefer 8th over 7th. I think 8th's brilliant. Obviously, I play it as much as I can, but there are issues with it, like there are with any game.
I will attempt to defend it against everything, but yeah, so I said other ones, like the reasons that died is everything I like about it. Like the massive units, which prices everybody out of introducing, getting into the game.
Going back to that game we played at Graham's, I think you were using like you had a unit of sword masters with Banner of the World Dragon on it, and you had like a level 4 like arc mage in the unit, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's like fair enough. And I was using, I think Is that right? I think you're using that, yeah?
I think the one I went for, because I think it was the first tournament I ever did, but I think it was a unit of 30 Phoenix Guard and a unit of 30 White Lions, and there would have been a mage in one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, either way, you had like this elite unit with like Banner of the World Dragon, and it ended up like fighting my Demon Prince, and obviously my Demon Prince couldn't cause any damage to you, but I'd like planned for that, and like I think I rolled up like the rest of your army, but because they're sword masters, they couldn't hurt my Demon Prince, and I was like, if you'd taken White Lions, you'd smash him, you know. So
That's frustrating because it's like it was you were Nurgle, I think. So it's like this is all -1, so I can't reroll. Even if I'm rerolling, I'm still missing half of them. So,
well, yeah, because I think you're on like 5s to hit, because he's like 4s to hit normally, and then 5s because it's like Mark and Nurgle, and then because you got great weapons, you don't get to reroll to hit.
No.
So yeah, he's a tough boy, you know. But at the time, I only like play with fully petted armies, and at the time, my Warriors of Chaos was my only fully petted army. So that's why I used him. But plus I wanted to win.
Some people have just yeah. There's that, of course. So just take Nurgle, a universal -1 to hit. It's disgusting.
It's not just that. It's the laws of magic that it opens up for you.
He's got the best chaos law of magic, and he's got universal -1 to hit.
Yeah,
brilliant. Not that I'm bitter or anything.
But this is coming from the guy who plays Lariel White Lions. So.
You told me to. That would never have occurred to me if you hadn't said it.
I think as well, it's like you were said to, because obviously we're in like a forum together, and you're going to the Cardiff tournament, aren't you?
Yes.
And you set up like the banter group for that, and you're talking about like, this is the list you're going to take, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I wrote that army list. I think I remember you sending me a list going, I'm thinking of doing this, and I was like, oh yeah, I'd tweak this and tweak this and tweak this.
It's even got a return of the Noble on Eagle with
the Noble. Yeah, and I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I wrote that army list.
Well, you can't improve on it. You clearly have like I can't, like people just see things and just say, oh, that it will work with that, and that will work with that, and that will be like a very, very powerful list. I don't have that ability. I can just copy.
I think what it was like, I'm a very competitive person, and that obviously comes across in my videos. I've had a few hate comments on YouTube because of how competitive I am, but it's fine. And it makes I think it makes some good content. But yeah, like I used to play chess competitively as a kid, and then with like Warhammer, and I was just like, wait, I can compete in the army list phase. When you're designing your army list, like prior to even getting to the battlefield, I can compete on a numbers level, and it got quite sad at one point because I mentioned earlier I'd like that 40k army with like over 100 wins. What I'd do is I'd actually tour the country, going to different stores with that army, like trying it out at different stores to get it ready for tournaments and stuff.
That's a level of commitment I can admire, but
I used to
not replicate.
I used to play a lot of tournaments, and what it was I worked out that because it was based upon like juggernauts of like blood crushers of Khorne, right? Juggernauts of Khorne, whatever they're called, and I worked out that you'd need 132 guardsman shots to kill one of them. And I was like, based on the averages, and I was like, right, I can take 24 in 1,500 points.
Yeah, do you do math hammer? Because
yeah. So before they're not like, I don't like talk about it with people, but Like when I'm like deploying or I'm thinking about charges, because I've been doing it for years, I work out the odds really quickly in my head. So
it's always 50-50. You'll either make the charge or you won't.
no, yeah, okay, I know those odds, but no, like I'll work out before I can make a charge, like what kind of combat res are you gonna have, before, after the fight, kind of thing. So yeah, it's a curse.
Well, it's not, because you just obliterate everyone in the tournaments. But,
well, I do miscalculate and make mistakes.
That's something though that the game, I think, more than other games, is it works. Like if you want to do a horrific competitive list and you agree that with the opponent, it can accommodate that. But if you want to do like the Tyrannok chariot list, you can do that as well. So we'll just power it down.
I think that's what like my last Warhammer Battle report on the YouTube channel was High Elves versus like Orcs and Goblins, and I was like, I've been using like my tournament demons, and I've used my like I think I used like a pure corn demon army, which is not very good against Graham. We agreed a composition score, I think, of around 8, like +8 prior to the battle. So I was like, right, let's make it like a non-cheese battle, and he was like fine with that because he's not a competitive player. And then against James, who is a very competitive player, we said for the last battle report, we'll do it around +6, +7. So I quite like agreeing a level of competitiveness before the game, but if it isn't decided, I'll probably just roll up with what's strong.
You've been warned.
You've been warned. Make an agreement with me beforehand.
Expect pain. A bit like, I'm not bothered either way. I know Graham prefers the fluff side of it, and some people prefer I'll play either version as long as I'm pre-warned. Because I'm not, I'm not the world's greatest player, but I like that part of the game where like I don't see, because I do still play a bit of 40k, but you don't really see like, I'll bring my depowered 40k list because you're just going to get annihilated, because that's just not how the game works.
Yeah.
It's probably not designed to work like that now.
Well, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
No. Stop talking about 40k in a fantasy themed chat. Those points though you're talking about there, that's those plus scores, that is the Triple Crown comp, which if people aren't aware, which they will be, because the only people who are listening to a fantasy podcast are people who are interested in fantasy. That is a particular way of grading army lists, which if you've got a positive comp, like, you can be up to +10, I think, depending on what you pick.
Yeah, it's the maximum, yeah.
And that's added on at the end of your final tournament score as a sort of reward for taking less strong units or less synergistic units.
It could be even less, the stuff that's least taken. Yeah.
And but you can have an unlimited minus. So I think what was the list I first drafted was like -11 with a 2 Phoenix Alariel Fan of the World Dragon on the unit standard rather than VSB.
Yeah.
So I don't know, is there something to just going all in on a minus and hoping you obliterate everyone and to make up the points difference?
So from my experience, I've been to Triple Crown a couple of times now. And I've taken High Elves both times. 2 different lists though, like very similar lists, but 2 different lists. I think the first time I went with a -6, and then the second time I went with a -5. And from talking to people there and talking to the organizers and like some of the more competitive people, it became established very quickly and became apparent that there is a magic number, and the magic number is around about -5, so -4, -5, -6. which is kind of where I'd put myself anyway. But that seems to be around the magic number area because the James has said it best on the podcast previously. Is the way to think about it is each game you play, you get a maximum of 20 tournament points, and the least you can get is 0, right? And if you take, let's say, a -10 list over 5 games, you actually get -2 per game. So really, the maximum amount of points you can get in a game is 18. Which is, and you've just got to factor those things in. Whereas if it's like -5, well, the maximum points each game really I can get is 19. So you really have to think about, well, if I get 19 points, but I win all my, if I win all my games and then -5 at the end, there's a bit of thinking about it. But the -5, -6 areas is probably the best. But I was a bit different to you because your list that you thinking of taking this time around is like very similar to the list I took last year. Apart from
you wrote it, that's why.
but I made mine. I think it was like a -4 or a -5. So I had that Ilarial, Banner of the World Dragon, the unit, the White Lions, like 38 White Lions, like a massive unit, and the 2 Frosties. But I still got the -2 around -4, -5 to make it so I still have this really powerful core of the army, but then I'm still around like a good numbers area, so I'm not losing too many points.
I don't know what I was doing. I was doing like the Highlander thing. You get +3 for having only one of each type. I think I got it down to something around -3, just with. But I think I switched out some of the Phoenixes. So I'll try it again. It's just I've been, not that I was ever any good at it, but when you out of practice with writing lists. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I haven't written a fantasy list for over a year.
I don't think I've ever been out of practice with writing lists.
Just do it for fun.
Yeah, like some people like to read or go on social media when they're in the bathroom, whereas like myself, I write armor lists.
Getting a deep dive into the inner workings of your mind here.
Some of the best ideas were thought up on the toilet.
Was it putting a L'Oreal in a block of White Lions, or was that pre-sage that?
Well, the thing is, I tell you what made me think of a L'Oreal, and it wasn't my idea. I'm going to be completely honest. It wasn't my idea. I was like, well, I'll take a high mage. I'll take a high mage. With Book of Hoeth. That was my thing. Book of Hoeth, Talisman of Preservation. That is my name. And then I was looking at it, and I was looking at the tournament comp. I was like, why is she -3? Like, she's got to be good if she's -3, right? And then I looked at it and went, oh, okay. Oh, I like that. So that's how, but so obviously people had already thought of it. It wasn't my idea. I'm not taking credit for it, but I did introduce you to it.
That's right. And then you get shit for it all the time. So I didn't come up with it. I just like using it.
I don't mind.
OP.
I think if you take like, I know there's like the non-competitive players out there, but as soon as you decide to take high elves, you've gone for one of the most powerful armies, even if you take a non-competitive list. I say that in quotes. I've got my fingers up in the air. It's like non-competitive. It's still it's going to be a very strong list, no matter what, So, but yeah, I think it's obvious that high elves are going to be good. So.
But not the best. Let's just get. They're definitely not the strongest.
They're not the strongest. No, there's. It's hard to say because, but I think personally that the White Lion Horde's like really good, but there are ways around it, and I've kind of like made it my mission to, whenever I write an army list, now, I go, can this deal with Alario and the White Lion Horde? And it will only get saved if it can.
Is this hour 3 on the toilet? Like, cancel that. No.
But it's like, like for example, my demon army. I think you've seen on the channel maybe is like really, really strong. Okay, and I'd say that's my strongest army. It's stronger than my high elf army against the majority of other armies. So arguably that demon army is stronger than high elves, right? Demons it's stronger than high elves, but obviously high elves have the 50-point magic banner of doom, which screws up demons. So but yeah, I think high elves are really, really strong. Definitely. You can't say they're not, but I don't think they're the strongest. No.
Well, every time I've used it and you think, oh, this is going to be easy, but something happens that just gums your plans up, or was it the first you didn't go to the Worcester one?
No, I haven't.
2 years ago, was it? No. That was a good tournament. In fact, all the tournaments I've been to have been good, but that was like, it was 3 games that really sort of, I think, pushed me. Because the first one I was playing Dark Elves, he had a Cauldron Death Star Witch Elf thing, and I was like, you make a decision, like, and you're saying you total these things up in your head, and like, I don't think the White Lions win this because they're not re-rolling, they haven't got hatred, they're not getting that many attacks, they're not wearing strong armor, and they don't use magical attacks.
Yeah.
So I don't think they win this. So it's just like a battle of maneuver to get the Death Stars away from the other Death Star and into the other units and sort of chop through them for the points. So that was interesting. And then the next game I played against Wood Elves, which I think I had very little or no experience against them. And it's like, what the hell do you do here? Like, I've got a massive block of infantry, which is meant to hit another block of infantry and kill it. But there's nothing to aim at. There is nothing to point this army at because they're all over the place. So it's like, right. So you've got to get across the board. You've got to find something to aim the army at and try and cut through it that way. Because once you touch them, they'll evaporate. But it's actually getting there. And you're getting shot to bits. Like, this is totally different. This is new. And then I was playing against the Skaven list, and that was like, well, mad Skaven are.
But all their good stuff does magical attacks.
Yeah, well, yeah. But they've got their mad magic, and you can cast it into stuff. And like, I think at the end there was like a thin band of maybe, I don't know, 17 White Lions left fighting against this massive. The entire army was just right. This is all that's left, but they're stubborn and they don't break. Well, they shouldn't break. And it was just like, what hell has this high elf general had to go through all this stuff? So it's always bordering on narrative, but that was a lot of fun.
I think Wood Elves have, they've had a tough break with 8th edition. They're not great, but I played against a very good Wood Elf player at Triple Crown, and I was thinking to myself, "Oh, this is easy," because I was looking at his army and it was like full of archers with like magical shots, and I was like, "Well, they're magical attacks. Get 2 at ward save, yeah." And then I was like, "Oh, you also get a really good armor save," but then I forgot that the Lion Cloak doesn't work against magical shooting. So you only get your ward save, right? So I was like, oh, that's fine. I only get my ward save. But looking at his army list, this guy obviously designed his Wood Elf army to defeat the 2 Frost Hearts and the Banner of the World Dragon list. And I was like,
has he got a counterpart in the Wood Elf?
I honestly, he's part of the I can't remember their name, but the team who organizes the tournament and does the rules, the committee, he's part of that team. So he's obviously, he's a good player. I wish I'd remember his name because he was a really nice guy as well. And we had a proper slugfest in that game. and I think he got like a minor win from it because of the points at the end. I failed a 7-inch charge on a frosty, and I needed to roll a 7 on the 3 dice, but I rolled like a 2, 2, and a 1, and that would have made it a draw. But what he did was a really, really good combo, and I've never forgotten it. And it always goes into any Wood Elf list that I write now. And it was, he took 2 level 4 spell singers, right? And I was like, why? Why would you do that? And one had the Law of Undeath, which I don't agree with, but fair enough. And one had Law of High Magic. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And he rolled for his spells, and he got obviously Arcane Unforging. And he arcaned unforging the Banner of the World Dragon, right? And he didn't care about miscasting, because the lore attribute for High Elves is you obviously get +1 ward save. And then the lore attribute for Lizardmen on High Magic is you can forget that spell and take 1 from the Laws of Magic. But for Wood Elves, you get a token on your unit, and for every time you cast a spell, you can stack up these tokens. And then if you ever cause wounds on the unit, you can remove the tokens to save your wounds, right? And so he casting all these little spells, and I didn't give a shit about it. And then he stacked up these tokens, and then he threw 6 dice at an Arcane Unforging, miscast, but he didn't care because he had all these tokens saved up to discount all the wounds. And then he Arcaned Unforging the banner on the unit, and I was like, okay, well, fair enough. But then he started shooting me with the magical arrows, and it was like, well, I don't get the Lion Cloak because that only works against mundane shooting, and I don't get Ilariel's 5 upward save because that only works against mundane attack. And so all of a sudden, my White Lion units was getting shredded. I think by the end of turn 3, beginning of turn 4, it was dead, the whole unit. And I was just like, what? It was absolutely crazy.
That's a horrible feeling, though. Right. That thing I was relying on is now completely destroyed. So
yeah,
adapt, overcome.
Well, I nearly managed. So even though I'd lost this huge thing, I nearly managed to scrape a draw from it, using the rest of the army. But which shows how powerful High Elves are even without that combo.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
There's a pro High Elf podcast.
But yeah, Wood Elves, they get a bad rep, but they do have some very, very, very nasty tricks up their sleeve, definitely.
Right, you mentioned the Law of Undeath there. What was your opinion on the end times then?
Well, in what, the story or the rules?
But I mean, actually, are you more the pure gaming, or do you like the fluff side of it as well?
I do like the fluff. I'm into the fluff. I'm not into it as much as you, when you can, name all the Phoenix Kings in order, going back to an Arion.
It's a very useful skill, that.
You're going to be on Mastermind, and it's like the Phoenix Kings.
I think there needs to be it's Triple Crown, because it's like your tournament, your points in winning your tournament list and painting, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like the three. There should be Quadruple Crown, where you have to do a quiz at the end about your faction.
When I used to go to Grand Tournament, what they used to do is you play 3 games on the Saturday, 2 games on the Sunday, which is like the standard thing. But what they'd do is they'd hold a quiz in Bugman's Bar on the evening.
That appeals to me.
Yeah, so you'd go in Bugman's Bar, get hammered, and argue with people about stuff that doesn't exist.
Do you get the feel you're slipping more and more into a fantasy world? I actually have an opinion on which Phoenix King is the best. And actually, Calador, the Conqueror, is clearly better than Tethys because he won this battle, and he was never tempted by the sword of Cain. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
No, I couldn't go into that depth. I have a very broad knowledge of the fluff, which is very helpful, and I do love the fluff. I've read some of the novels and stuff like that, and I always read the fluff in the army books, but that's as far as my fluff knowledge goes. But in terms of the end times, I've got all the end times books in hardback. The proper hardback ones in the hardback boxes that they came out with. I'm very
are they proud of my somewhere? Because they're quite expensive now, aren't they?
They're on my shelf, and I've got every single 8th edition army book as well. That kind of thing. I wanted to make sure that when I heard that 8th edition was disappearing, I was like, right, I need to get every set of magic cards. I need to get every army book. Now
I've got 3 sets of magic cards just in case.
So but in terms of the fluff, in regards to end times, I'm looking at my shelf now. Glotkin was good. I thought Nagash was brilliant. Fanquol and Kane, and it was the last one Archeon or something. No. People won't be able to tell, but if you look at my Discord symbol, it's Archeon, right? On his horse, not on his dragon, on his horse. And
for purists out there.
Yeah, and my logo for the Toy Soldier Tales is based on Archeon. I couldn't do it exactly like Archeon because of copyright, but it's based on it. Do
you want to disclaim this in case the lawyers are listening?
No, I can't base it. I can't be exactly him because of copyright. So the guys who designed the logo for me made it copyright, okay or whatever. So Archeon, I absolutely love him. I've played D&D characters based upon him. I love him, which is weird to say, but. So in regards to the End Times Archeon book, I like how awesome they made him. Yeah, and they had bloodthirsters kneeling to him, and things like that because he's just a badass. He is awesome. And then, but I didn't like the way the story ended. Who could? But I liked how awesome they made him.
It was strange for me because. I said I sort of got into 8th and then there was a bit of a drop off and I got back into it. But that was after this had all happened. So I was going to the shop going what the hell is Age of Sigmar? What's happened? Why is it on round bases? Then you read the world blew up. Wait a minute, skip back here. How did that happen?
I don't want to get drawn into that because so some of my closest friends tease me to this day about Age of Sigmar, and I'll post pictures of models on square bases, and they're like, "Oh, it's on the wrong base," and all this stuff, and they're always
you can say no, yours on the wrong place.
they're just doing it to trigger me, And
actually, your base is wrong because it's round.
But yeah, it's I just couldn't. I tried to play it, I just couldn't. But that's all I've got to say about it. One thing I'm really happy about, and obviously everything is the announcement of the old world.
Yes,
and I'd like to just thank everyone in the community, but for keeping the game alive. People like yourself, people like Mark, Pete who host tournaments, people like Graham who host tournaments. The Triple Crown guys.
That Champions of Destiny page has sort of been one of the holdouts for the game.
Damien as well, because I think Damien is admin of about 20 different Warhammer pages, and so people this community wouldn't have survived without people like that, and so obviously big shout out to them. But I tell you what, one of my biggest shout outs, and I think one of the things that has saved Warhammer Fantasy is Total War Warhammer.
Yeah,
and how successful
absolutely
that's been. And if that hadn't have been so successful, I don't think we would be getting an old world.
I was talking about this, and it's like the timing of it. I don't think they had another choice, because we've just blew the world up, and then we've given the license to Creative Assembly, who create, I think, the best game they've ever done and probably will ever do. And they must have. I can only imagine that people come in saying, "Oh, I've played the game. It's based on the models. Can we buy the models?" Well, you sort of.
No, you can't. You can't.
Like,
what's this whole top?
How much money did they lose, or not lose, but not make? Because people have, I want to buy this stuff. Where is it? Oh, it doesn't really exist anymore. It was ended before Total War was a thing.
I can't. Obviously, I don't have to agree with Games Workshop's decision, but I can understand the decision they made at the time. Okay,
oh, absolutely. Didn't make money.
No, it didn't make money, and Age of Sigmar has obviously made money, but Games Workshop is the most profitable it's ever been. It's flying high. It's amazing. Good for them. And they produce the best models on the market. So I'm all by Games Workshop. Good for you, right? Send me some models to review on my channel.
Hang on. You can't whore your channel for free stuff on my channel.
I told you I was a whore. And then, so good for them. But I don't necessarily have to agree with it. But I didn't like the decision. But they made that decision. They've obviously made money off it. But I just don't think, because they've done obviously other Warhammer games. There's been loads. Dawn of War or Space Hulk or Battlefleet Gothic. And all these things. Like, let's take Battlefleet Gothic or Space Hulk, for instance. Right? Those two games came out, and they've done well, and they're all right games, but they've not blown up. They're not these big blown up games like Warhammer 2 blew up.
No.
It's like Warhammer 2 everywhere. Hundreds of YouTube channels dedicated to producing content on it.
I think it's amazing that they're still, or up to very recently, we're still doing DLC for it, and that game is coming up to 5 years old. I think
it's. You know what? I think it's about 4 years old, and I tell you why. Because my son's 4, and I remember playing it. For the first time when he, just before he was born / when he was born. So yeah, maybe
the
4 or 5.
Suite, we had a Total War. Computer, did it?
Well, the thing was, it was like I remember, like, my missus was like pregnant or with the baby, and I felt bad about being in my little office, playing the game. And while she's obviously like either pregnant or looking after the baby. So what I did was I moved my PC into the living room.
Oh, what a modern man you are!
So I could sit there and just be like, "Oh yeah, I'll just pause this," I'm doing this for you,
Oh, yeah. What a sacrifice I have made! I've moved my desk 4 foot into another room.
Oh, I didn't move the desk. I just put I put it on the kitchen table.
She's very lucky. What a lucky woman.
Yeah. Oh no, she's great. She's been really supportive. So, but no, yeah. So thank you also to where I was going with this. Thank you to also Creative Assembly. Because if they hadn't produced such an amazing game, as I said, I don't think we'd been getting the old world. So
I think they've not screwed themselves, but I've played their was it 3 Kingdoms, and and it's like £40 or something it was, and I was playing it for about half an hour. Thinking, there's no dragons, there's no magic. Turn this off. I'm going back to Total War.
couldn't
Warhammer.
stand that. Couldn't stand Three Kingdoms because I used to play. Going off Warhammer for a second, I used to play Dynasty Warriors. On like Xbox and PlayStation and stuff like that, which was what it's based upon the Three Kingdoms saga or legacy or tale ever. So that Three Kingdoms was based upon that, and so I knew all the characters before going into the game because it's all the same characters, it's all the same maps, it's all the same places, it's all the same events, and I was like, oh yeah, the combining. Oh, it's the Three Kingdoms Romance, I think it's called, or Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Combining that with Total War, it's going to work. Yeah, I think I've got maybe an hour of playtime on it, and then as I did the same as you, I went straight back to Warhammer, and I was like, yeah,
it's more realistic, but we'll go back. We'll get the Swordmaster in and all that.
But I think I can't. I've probably, I think I've got something like 500 to 600 hours on Warhammer.
I don't even want to look. That's how much of my life has been absorbed with playing this game.
Well, just think about how much of your life's been absorbed by Warhammer Fantasy.
Well, actually, I don't mind. Something like this is almost they're in the closet about this hobby. Like, I'm the total opposite. I will openly bore people to death talking about Anarion and Karl Franz and Sigmar and how it all happened, and I'm not asked.
But no, I'm really glad we're going to get an old world, and if it's on Square bases, I'll jump on it when it comes out. But
they teased it, but how accurate is that tease? I don't know.
My only thing with it is, so I was working for Games Workshop when War of the Ring came out, okay, and they tried to turn the Lord of the Rings skirmish game into a battle game, yeah. And Age of Sigmar is arguably a skirmish game. It's not a battle game, in my opinion. And they may try and turn that. I know it's the old world and they're not, but they may try and turn that rule set into a battle game. Okay, so the problem with the War of the Ring, great idea, but the problem with it was the rule book was shoddy. Right? If it was a movie, it'd be full of plot holes. There was just so much inconsistency in the rules and the play and the units and everything like that, and that was one of the things that turned me off with Age of Sigmar. Is I read the rule book and I went, this doesn't make sense.
But to be fair, this is like a 4-year development cycle for the old world, isn't it?
And that's why I'm probably going to jump on it when it comes out. But I just hope, and I'm glad, I'm glad that they are. I hope that it works. They just spend some time and care and produce a good quality, non-rushed product that comes out and you can read it and you can pick it up and go, that's the Warhammer that I remember. With new and improved tweaks, on how to make the game quicker. But I think one of the things with what they tried to change was they tried to make games quicker. And it's like, oh, you want to get a game done in 40 minutes. And I'm like, no, I want to spend 2.5 hours playing a game of Warhammer.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
I don't want to get the game done in 40 minutes.
I don't know if you know, in 40K, they've now shrank the standard game size, the table size.
What's the table size now?
It's something like you can play it depending on the points values, expands and shortens, but it's knocked like a foot off at least each dimension. And I think the smallest is like a 4x4.
Well, yeah, okay.
So that totally changes because it now makes mid-range things very powerful. But I don't want them to do that.
No, they've done games like Warcry, and I don't mind Warcry. It's a pretty nice little skirmish game. Completely different rule set to a lot of other games, and I play that for what it is. It isn't a replacement of Warhammer. It's a little skirmish game, right? And that's fine. I'm happy with that. And yeah, it's on a little 2 foot by 2 foot board or something like that. Yeah, fine, I can get on board with that. Blood Bowl, it's a little board. That's what it's for. Play that. I don't want to play a battle on a little board, and I don't want to play with 2 units or 3 units. I want to play with, as we were saying at the beginning, I want to play with 100 models. I want to play with 200 models. I want to fight a 500 Skaven.
And then set them on fire.
So I just hope that I hope that they didn't go too far away with it, but I can't deny Games Workshop, they can get a lot of flack about their rules and then maybe about their content, but you can't deny the quality of miniatures that they. Okay, sorry, quality of miniatures, yes. Questionable design decisions is also yes.
Yeah, well, it's all people like. I like complaining about everything. Just people like to complain, but really, they're churning out stuff that people like to play and like to buy. So, yeah, complain, don't complain. I know I'm guilty of it, but ultimately, I'm still going to give them a load of money.
Yeah, I think that's where I'll end up. He's giving it a load of money.
Just accept it. Just come to terms with it. We've said how great 8th was. However, there are some rules that keep coming up as things that were a problem with 8th. And I don't know if you agree. Now, people complain about steadfast, which is if you've got more ranks than the opposing unit, you are effectively stubborn. You roll on your unmodified leadership.
Yeah.
I haven't got a problem with that rule. As my response to that is, do you remember Cavhammer in 6th edition?
As I said, I only really played 7th edition.
Right.
So,
well, they didn't in 6th. They didn't have step up, and there wasn't steadfast. So cavalry unit goes straight in. Charges always go first. So cavalry unit hits a unit. If you kill what the number of in the front rank, so if it's a 5 rank unit, if you kill at least 5 models, that unit then can't strike back. So it can't affect any wounds on you. There's no step up.
I think that was the same in 7th, though.
Was it? There's no step up, yeah. And even if you've got like a massive unit, which is only taking a relatively small amount of wounds, it then breaks, and then the cavalry unit charges into the next unit along and just rolls the line up. So cavalry was so they purposely went for an infantry strong 8th edition, which ties into why it failed, because to get a massive infantry unit, you require a 50 strong infantry unit to use horde and steadfast and stuff, which is too expensive.
Okay, here's my thing about it, right? Okay. When I first looked at steadfast, I was like, that's overpowered, just looking at it on paper, because you get +3 for your rank bonus just off the bat. Yeah. And then you're also getting steadfast. So that's going to make it really hard to break that unit because of, ranks, combat res, and whatnot. But there's a few counters I've got to that as well. I don't mind it. Like, my overall thing is I don't mind it. There's a few counters to it. Okay. My first counter is a rules counter, which is, you don't get steadfast in woods. That makes sense because you're disrupted and everything. I don't think you get steadfast when you're disrupted, so that's like another thing.
No, and if you get something on the side with 2 ranks of 5, then you don't get your.
Yeah, so that makes sense. And then,
oh dear, I might be wrong there.
And then the other one is that they produced unit wiping spells. Yeah, so
that's point 2 coming up.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of counters built into the game before you even consider army lists and models that perform an effective against steadfast. So yeah, I'm not too fussed about it. My other thing as well is when for anyone who used to play in the tournament scene in 7th, if you want to play armies where you've got Col Franz on a dragon, two steam tanks, 30 handgunners, and 4 cannons. If that's the kind of games you want to play, yeah, fine. Because that's what that's the armies you were getting in that edition. Ranks didn't really matter. I think you weren't getting. It was all just about cavalry. It was all about monsters. It was all about heroes. And so they went, right, well, how do we make this I say realistic for a game based upon magic and stuff? But if you looked at old medieval things like infantry won battles, so I think I'd rather see big units of infantry battling it out than Karl Franz, 2 steam tanks, 4 cannons, and 30 handgunners.
That's again like when I was saying before. I like it makes you feel like Commander Battle. A big block of infantry, like a phalanx, it doesn't break unless you do disrupt it. That's the idea. It's a big block of infantry that is going to stay put and roll over things.
Yeah.
So you hit that with one cavalry unit. It doesn't just collapse unless you do it in the side or the rear. So, and then what you were saying about that brings you on to the horde. Now that's again, I don't mind horde. It's like the high risk, high reward thing. Yeah, you're going to put all your vast quantity of points into this massive unit, but you cast like Dwellers Below
Purple Sun.
Yeah, Purple Sun, and then that's just it's 50% of it is wiped out before you've even made contact with the enemy. So I don't mind that either.
No, exactly, and I think that's the thing. You can we can all complain about the prices because it was like, all right, I want to take a unit of 50 halberdiers. What size box does it come in? 10, right? Okay, how many points is 10 halberdiers? 70 points or whatever, 60 points. And so
you better have a mortgage statement here before you go to the GW.
How much money is 10 halberdiers? I think it was like 15 quid at the time. So all of a sudden you've got. I'm not doing the witch elf argument because we all know that was the worst. But they're worth. No, you got 10. You got 10 in a box for like 20 quid. But like halberdiers, for instance, it's like really dirt cheap unit. You only get 10 in a box. To make them effective, you have to take like 50 of them. So you have to spend 75 quid on a 350 point unit. So we can all complain about the prices all you want, but I would rather use and play against 50 halberdiers than multiple small units. Yeah, that's me personally. That's my preference.
MSU is big in 6 as well. That's a bit I didn't like it.
I still play MSU, to be fair, in 8th edition with some armies. Some armies do work well better with MSU. Obviously, Wood Elves being one of them. You're not going to take a horde of anything. Wood Elves, so but everyone looks at the artwork. Everyone looks at the Warhammer rule book, and they open it up and they see the set pieces. You look at the artwork and you see these armies, and I think they've designed in 8th edition. Well, they designed a rule system based upon that. Yeah. So
yeah.
I think they did well.
No problem with that either. This might be one. The strength of cannons in the game.
Yeah, that's because you've got pre-measuring.
Coming on to that, yeah.
So, cannons have always been good, right? The problem with cannons in previous editions is you had to know trigonometry. Right. And so for a brand new player getting into the game, it was sometimes difficult to work out how to hit something with a cannon from across the table. the argument being with that, well, as you become a more veteran player, it becomes piss easy.
Yeah, it's the months of being pasted without being able to master it to get to that point.
Hey, but me and you grew up in the old days where you had to spend months of pain before you got good, right? And
I was a Lizardman player at that point, which didn't really have any canon.
but it for me, I when I was a kid, I used to get pasted at Warhammer all the time, right? But you take your losses and you take your wins. The few you got at the time. But you learnt the game. You learnt how to become a competent general. Now cannons have turned into where you could point, click, and destroy. The other really thing about cannons being overpowered is I don't mind the D6 wounds. Was that and why people say cannons are overpowered is monsters got a nerf against hordes and steadfast. Fair enough. The other thing is so they got nerfed against hordes and steadfast. They got nerfed against cannons because cannons can now point and click on them. But the other thing was about characters riding monsters. So
this is the biggest problem I have because even though it's a line where the cannonball goes, it's classed as a template in the rules, which means it hits everything under it.
See, they should have taken that out, or they should have errated that. Obviously, I think that's tournament organizers should look at that maybe and
well, I'm sure they'll listen to this podcast. So
well, Graham hosts tournaments, so like with Graham, I think he said, right, well, we'll change it to like D3 plus 1 wounds rather than D6 wounds. Right, okay, well, D3 plus 1 I think makes it more reliable, but you're never going to roll a 1, are you? I think the best way of erratering that or changing it is to take it back and go on a 5 or 6 it hits the guy, and then a 1, 2 through to 4 it hits the monster.
Well, that's just the normal shooting scatter.
They should just do it like that. It's the same. The actual things for fire in the cannon, fair enough. If you're not going to remove pre-measuring, which you shouldn't because the whole game's based on it, even if I don't like it. But you should just make it 1 through to 4 hits the monster, 5, 6 hits the character.
Have you heard the thing where you don't measure at all? You just, if you're the cannon, you just point to somewhere. You don't measure it. You just point to somewhere on the battlefield and say that's where the BAM starts.
What I don't like is where people say, "I'm going to go 10 inches from the back of your model."
Yeah, that's what.
they don't even get their tape measure out.
You don't have to look, do you? Where's the back of your model? Well, 10 inches from that.
Yeah, and they don't even go, I'm going to bounce here and then go here. In like 6th, 7th edition, you'd go, right, I think your unit's about 30 inches away. And so with my thing, I'll say 6. So I'm going to guess 24, right? Because I think you're about 30. So I'm going to guess 24. I'm going to roll the dice. Oh, I got a 4, and now hopefully it's going to bounce into you. Yeah, so that's good. I can agree with that. But it was never. Oh, I'm going to go 10 inches from the back of your base.
Imagine how easy it would be to be an artilleryman if you just fire at 10 from the back of that over there. Like, you don't have to calculate anything.
I like, but people counter arguments at the time. I was like, oh yeah, but when you're building your Empire army, why would you hire such inexperienced gun crews? Surely they would know the distances. And I'm like, have you been in the Warhammer world? None of the gun crews survive long enough to ever be in a second battle.
Yeah, but there's all sorts of compromises made for gameplay. Like, I know this has been high elf heavy, but high elf mages know all the laws of magic.
Yeah,
but they just pick one. If you said you are lawmaster everything, every high elf mage is lawmaster everything, that might be a bit strong.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, cannons. Yes, they are overpowered. What can we do? Well, you've got homebrew rules. There's multiple things you could go D3 plus 1. You can do or you could do the 1 to 4 hits the monster, 5 or 6 hits the character. I think that works out best, you know. So
you think that's got to be even the best artillery captain in the Warhammer world to fire a cannon so it hits both the rider and the monster. That's quite a shot.
Well, didn't you know that the Warhammer monsters and their riders are like the Sand People from Star Wars, and they always walk in single file,
right? And there's no change in the trajectory. It doesn't hitting the dragon doesn't change the arc of the ball. It just cuts through both. Yeah.
Like, I can understand it from like a stone thrower perspective, because the stone thrower is coming from above, but you know, if they were on the floor, but if they're flying, then which, you know, forget all that on a roll. If I was going to do homebrew rules, which I don't because we play on the channel, 1 to 4 hits the monster, 5 or 6 hits the character. Done. That'd make it much better for people, and you might actually see characters on monsters.
Yeah, I think that'd be. They should have thought of that if the game wasn't dead.
Yeah. Just put it in comps packs. You know?
Tournament. You know, then I've got a big following or not in tournament organizers. What else is? Because I've got my it's been extremely high off heavy. I've got my Prince on Star Dragon, which is a 660 point load of nonsense.
So like Star Lance and all that stuff.
I think I gave him the Giant Blade because
yeah.
Just wanted to tool him up to the max, and he's funny. I've only used him once because it was a bit more less competitive list I was taking to Armor World, and it just gets killed. I'm not complaining because it's a game, and you know I've no doubt been in a different position where you kill people's favorite units quite quickly. But I'd like to get a few rounds of combat in. You know?
It's funny. I don't normally take characters on monsters or anything anymore because of that kind of stuff. My most recent Tomb Kings list is very different though, but I'm not taking Tomb Kings to be competitive. So
if you can make a competitive Tomb Kings list, that's quite a challenge.
You can. There's like certain recipes, but yeah, mine's not competitive. So, but it's based upon Warhammer 2, actually. I've built it based on that. So
is it the Bo Ishabti list that's so good in Warhammer?
No. So in Warhammer 2, for people who don't know, when your character gets to a certain level, you can put them on mounts. So I always stick mine, if I'm playing, as Tomb Kings, I always put mine on Sphinxes, right? Because I think they're great, and I just love the way that like these little stone metal cats just like prancing around, like killing them. It's like they're playing with their food. It's great. So my Tomb Kings list that I'm, in building, and I'll be posting pictures of it soon. It's got a Tomb King on Sphinx, a Tomb Prince on Sphinx, and 2 Sphinxes. So it's like, it's just about
Sphinx spam.
Well, it is. It's like 4 Sphinxes, a whole bunch of archers, 1 wizard, because you always take in Warhammer 2, if you've got like a combat lord for your army, you only have 1. Usually you'd only have 1 hero level wizard, right? So that's what I've done. I've taken a hero level wizard. So it is really, really based off a Warhammer, the way I play Warhammer 2. So it's but it's got characters and monsters on it. So I am not looking forward to coming up against someone who, takes out my Tomb King on turn 1.
Just 10 from the back,
10 from the back of that Sphinx, and he's got like a 5-inch base, so he's bound to hit it,
2 and then another 2. That's the only way you can fail. Well, misfire. What other rule didn't? I think that was it, really. That's the 3 that you usually get complaints about.
There's like I would say like cannons people complain about a lot. There's one rule that I've abused before that people complain about as well. So I have a Dark Elf army, and in it I take a unit of 10 Doomfire Warlocks. And, well, this is one of my many Dark Elf lists, but in the most competitive one, I take a unit of 10 Doomfire Warlocks with 4 Masters on Darksteed with 1-up saves.
I've seen this done before.
Yeah, we went to that tournament in what's it? I think it was Sheffield or something. And so what you do is you put all your characters at the front and the champion of the unit, right, in combat, and the wizard just sits in the back, just like do what they do. And they go, "Oh, I'm going to hit the unit." It's like, well, you can't. And it's like, why? And it's like, well, you're only in combat with characters. And it's like, what about the champion? And it's like, oh, well, the champion, well, could be a number of things. One, if you attack the champion, you have to declare that you're attacking the champion, not the unit. And so you can't attack the unit through the champion. But also the champion is more than likely going to be in a challenge, so you can't attack him anyway. So you can only attack the 1-up armor save, the masters. And then, these guys have to split their attacks against this one, and these guys have to split their attacks against this one. That rule's shite. And it's shite. I'm not going to lie, it's shite. It's the same when you play an ogre bus, and all of a sudden,
it's the same with ogre, that they push all the characters
all the characters just come to the front. It's the same when you play Bretonians, and all the Bretonian characters are in the front rank. And it's like, oh, I've got 3 90-point paladins, who are at the front, and you have to kill them before you can. That's the bullshit rule. There you go. That's another one for your list. Is you can't hit the unit. And I remember I was playing in that tournament in Sheffield, and my unit of Dark Riders got charged by a Bretonian unit, and I wasn't bothered. I was like, yeah, it'd be fine, because of what I've got in the front rank. And the guy was like, oh, I'm going to attack the unit. I was like, no, you can't. And he's like, why? And I told him the rule. And he was like, oh, that's shit. And I went, I know, but that's the rule. And he was like,
it's the letter in the law.
Yeah, it is, And so this is the only tournament I've ever been bitter at. And so the guy went to the guy who was running the tournament. I'm not naming any names. Went to the guy who was running the tournament, who I like and is a good guy, and told him the rule, and he went, "Oh no, that's bollocks. Yeah, you can hit the unit." And I went, "Hold on a second, no, he can't." And he's like, "Yeah, it's in the rules pack." And I'm like, "No, it's not in the rules pack." And then I was like, "You know what? I can't be asked to argue." Okay, I was up until 3 a.m. last night painting. And then driven here today. I can't be asked to argue. And so he attacked the unit, killed it, and overran my 4 masters and my wizard, right? And I was like, right, that's game lost. But it's a bullshit rule. If you are not going to play by that rule, please state it in your rules pack prior to the tournament. But
I'm sure how many vendettas we're trying to settle on this podcast.
It's just one of those rules, and yeah, just say to people you can always attack the unit, past characters, if you want to do that. That's fine, because it stops this whole cheesemongering from players like me. So,
and that's an interesting combination of a chess application to army lists plus exploitation of rules, which probably weren't meant to be done. I don't think the designers thought, "Oh, this could happen. We'll stick it in anyway."
Yeah, well, sometimes I think when they play test these games, they should get people like me to do it, because
break this game. They do it with like tech people, don't like see if you can hack this website.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, see if you can break this. Okay, you can go do it, and then they can make a real design decision about whether they want to do it or not.
I don't even think that's. I think that's worse. People like me who go. I couldn't think of this, but that looks pretty good. I'm going to copy it.
But it's just try. I can't think of any other rules off the top of my head that are wrong. There was the one that got me, which I thought was hilarious when the rulebook first came out, and it was the wording of always strikes first until it got errated.
Reroll failed hits or something, was it?
No, it was reroll failed misses.
Failed misses, that's right.
And it was like, so a failed miss is a hit. So if I have to I have to re-roll my hits? How is that a benefit?
It's so skilled that you can't hit very well.
It's like, I'm just going to dance my sword around you. Oh, look how skilled I am. But no, it's like things like that. Those kinds of things should be read. But I understand that people have deadlines, and there's certain commercial reasons as to why you would skip things. But I work in IT projects, I know. So there
was a thing with Occam's Mindraiser where the rule before it was errated was like it was only when rolling to wound. So it wouldn't affect the armor save. But
that's right. Rules as written, it doesn't affect the armor save.
But that's errated later to say, actually, it does affect the armor.
Because I called that out once, and then someone was like, have you read this? And I was like, all right, fair enough.
Was it me? Because I've corrected somebody on that.
It was Steve.
Oh, right, okay.
Steve, the rules lawyer, he's worse than I am.
I've played him at I forget what army he was at Sheffield, and
I know this exact thing because I was listening to your last podcast.
Oh, sorry, I've told this story.
Yeah, episode 8 with
episode 8 was not 7, not 6.
Go and watch it, folks. It's very entertaining. But in part 1, you mentioned it, and he was using his Warriors of Chaos monster army, and you'd killed Kolek. And
yes,
you thought,
that was it.
Yeah, I've won this. And then, because I remember I was playing further down, and my game finished early, and I was like, how's it going? Because obviously I know both of you, and then you were like, I've killed his big thing, and I was like, all right, go. Well, I looked at Steve and I was like, Steve, how's it going? And he's like shook his head as if to say it's not going well. and I was like, okay. And then I finished my game and I saw you were like putting your models away, and Steve came over and I was like, how'd it go, Steve? And he was like, I won. And I was like, what? How did you win?
It was something to do with regenerating trolls, or it was some bullshit. He obviously had manipulated the rules by playing them as they were intended.
That sounds like him. That does sound like him. Like, yeah. But Steve's like he obviously appears on our podcast, and he writes armor lists more than I do, so he must be on the toilet all the time. And like he comes out with some of the like strangest combinations sometimes, and I'm like, how have you thought of that? He's like, oh well, this rule says this, and I'm like, all right, okay, fair enough.
When house arrest was relaxed a bit last year, we played Triumph and Treachery, which is another good thing to talk about. And he came in with this list, which is like, I think it was 3 blocks of like 100
zombies
and 5 level 1 necromancers. And I've burnt one of them to the ash with fiery convocation, and within about a turn, it was back. Like, what are you supposed to do about this?
I've not played against that yet. He keeps threatening me with it, saying that I can't get through that many rooms, but I think I can.
But in that situation where it would make sense to team up against somebody, but you want the quick points, so you don't. So I think Stan was ready to stab me because it's like, why aren't you going against him? Why are you attacking me? Well, I'd rather have the quick points then, because I'm never going to burn through that many zombies who are worth nothing. Even if you kill them all, so what?
Yeah, like 3 points a model. So, well done, you've killed 100 zombies. It's like 300 points.
Took me 5 turns and a miscast and losing me mage and everything, but I got rid of that zombie unit.
Yeah, it's a good one for that. I've never actually. I've played Triumph and Treachery only twice, maybe 3 times, because when I get together with my mates, obviously the most important thing is to have fun. It's the rule number 1 of the rule book. But I tried to record a game, yeah, and it's like I need to build up a bank of games to record so I can release 1 a week, that kind of thing. So if I can get 5 games recorded over a couple of days, then that's 5 weeks worth of content,
Yeah.
So I'm always like, right, let's get let's play a game and record it. And so by the time I've recorded that game and then someone else has had a go and then someone else has maybe had a go, it's getting like quite late on. And so, when we play Triumph and Treachery, it's only about, maybe 1,000 points each, like 1,500 points each. But we obviously, both of us have all been unable to meet up. We haven't, been able to play it or anything. But I do really like Triumph and Treachery. I do think it's fun, but we always gang up on the same person, no matter whether this is James, who's also from the channel. We've got this rule in our group, in our friendship group, that James must be destroyed at all costs. Like, no matter what we're playing, he has to lose. He's not allowed to win. And I think that's why the game I played with my demons against his orcs, I got a lot of flack for how competitive I was in that game. And I was like, you don't understand. He has to lose. He can't. He's not allowed to win. And
you might have to put a little disclaimer before.
I did. I put it in the description. People keep still giving me shit about it. But anyway, it was like, so no matter what he's playing or what we're playing, everyone gangs up on him first. It is funny, but it is a good game, Triumph and Treachery. I think going back to mini wargaming is the guys who obviously got me to like it because they've played it quite a few times.
Their Triumph and Treachery games are good.
The one with Nagash on it, and he's like,
well, when Ash is about to have an aneurysm because no one's going against Owen.
Yeah, and he's just
raising Manfred by the end of it.
Yeah, he's like, the guy's got like 4 bolt throwers, and he just doesn't. The Dark Elf player's got like, what is it, for like 4 bolt throwers? He's just not firing any of them. He's just like, oh yeah, but there's the High Elf player over there, and he's like, he's got the gash. He's like, do something. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, it's a good. We've played it at. I think it was Scott who got me into it, or Andy or whatever. And I was like, "Yeah, this is a great game." And we played. I've played with the other John, who was episode 1, and Adam, who was episode, don't know, 6, I think. And because of the way, because Adam's an undead player, but he likes zombies and the core units more than the other stuff. So the deployment is small. It's like it's about a foot square.
Yeah,
I think. So he's just wedged in, so he couldn't move. So like, well, this is easy. You can't point anything at me. So like, oh, for God's sake, I'm getting destroyed again. But yeah, it's a bad set. It's not a. But then Steve did it with 150 zombies. So I don't know how. Obviously, it's not such of a handicap that you've wedged into this zone, but
no, it's you can't take Triumph and Treachery seriously. It's a fun game, and
it's not meant to be. And that thing where I've got this perfect thing. I need to go first next turn. And everything right, you're going last. Oh, right, we'll charge you, and no, there's your card that says you can only half charge. Or I'm going to fire at this. Nope, that card says that has moved, and it's move or fire. Like, well,
I think the strongest thing in that game is when you go last and then go first on the next turn.
The double turn. Yeah.
That is, really, really strong. It's 2 rounds of magic, please, before you guys can do anything, or 2 rounds of shooting if you got a shooting army. It's like, nah, it's a good game, but it's not something I get to play often, and I would like to play more, but I'd also like to play more of just normal fantasy.
I like to play any of it at the minute. It's like withdrawal symptoms. Well, I think we've run out of time at the minute, but if you want, we can continue this not immediately, later on, because this isn't being done later on to make it appear that we intended to split the episode. So will you come back for part 2?
Yeah, I'll come back for part 2. Look forward to it.
Well, see you next time. Thanks for listening.